Welcome to the Explainer. So if you've ever stared at a massive 100-plus page dissertation, the literal product of your blood, sweat, and tears, and wondered how on earth you're going to shrink it down into a sleek, publishable academic journal article, well, you are in exactly the right place. It's a hugely overwhelming challenge for so many folks transitioning from student to published author. But today, we're going to break that massive academic shift down both visually and structurally. We're going to make this transition not just manageable, but completely clear.
All right, let's dive into our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at thesis versus journal article. Second, breaking down the structure. Third, academic referencing systems. And finally, comparing citation styles.
Starting off with Section 1, thesis versus journal article, we are taking a macro perspective here. Think of your thesis like a heavyweight champion. It's comprehensive, it's exhaustive, clocking in anywhere from 100 to well over 300 pages, and its core audience is your academic committee. Your job there was literally to prove you did the work. But a journal article, that is your agile sprinter. It's incredibly concise, heavily focused, and drops way down to just 6,000 to 10,000 words. And crucially, your audience changes entirely. You're now communicating directly to peers and domain specialists who already understand the background context. That means you don't need to hold their hands through the absolute basics. The absolute crucial point here is understanding the shift in your primary goal. The goal of a thesis was to demonstrate academic rigor, prove your mastery of the methodology, and give this complete background context. And honestly, it is incredibly hard to let go of wanting to constantly prove yourself when you sit down to write an article. But the ultimate solution for actually getting published is shifting your mindset. The primary goal of an article is simply to communicate a single, impactful conceptual finding or outcome, and to do it concisely. You're moving from proving your entire exhaustive process to confidently communicating an outcome. Moving right along to Section 2, breaking down the structure. Time to deconstruct those massive chapters. Let's start at the very top with the abstract. A thesis abstract is basically a sweeping, cinematic trailer of your entire academic journey. Roughly 300 to 500 words giving a detailed overview of every single chapter and all your broad implications. But an article abstract, that's a highly structured elevator pitch. You've got 150 to 250 words max, conforming to a strict layout that outlines your objective, method, results, and conclusion. It's fast, it's punchy, and it instantly tells a busy peer if they should invest their time in reading any further. Now, moving into the literature review, a journal article ruthlessly strips away that deep foundational history. In a thesis, your literature review is this standalone, massive chapter. We're talking 20 to 50 plus pages reviewing everything from foundational texts right up to the most recent work. But for an article, you are condensing a massive chapter into just 1 to 3 paragraphs integrated right into your introduction. You're giving a highly concise 1 to 2 page justification covering only the directly relevant studies just to identify your specific research gap. The differences in methodology and results are just as stark. In a thesis, you provide step-by-step documentation for exact replication. You're including tool validity, raw scripts, and an exhaustive presentation of all your primary, secondary, and even negative findings. But in a journal article, you gotta be willing to kill your darlings. You summarize your methods, emphasizing only what's novel, and you focus purely on the key data that directly tests your primary hypotheses. Literally everything else gets left on the cutting room floor. Let's move into Section 3, academic referencing systems, the nuts and bolts. Before we even talk about specific styles, just note how drastically the pure volume of references shrinks here. Moving from a masterwork thesis to a focused journal piece means going from 100 to over 300 exhaustive citations down to a tight list of just 25 to 50. And let's be honest, there is a massive sense of relief in knowing you only have to format a tight bibliography of 30 sources instead of 300. But because of that strict limit, every single citation in an article really has to earn its place. They need to be highly targeted, recently published, and peer-reviewed. So to set a logical stage for the specific style manuals, we need to clearly define the two primary overarching systems of academic referencing. The first is the author date system, which is super common in the social sciences and life sciences. The second is the numbered system, and that's the standard common in STEM disciplines. Keeping these two massive, overarching categories in mind is absolutely vital because they completely govern everything else we're about to discuss. Understanding this fundamental divide is the key to mastering your specific discipline's rules. Which brings us to Section 4, comparing citation styles. These are your specialized tools. First up is APA style, currently on its 7th edition. You're going to see this heavily in the social sciences, psychology, education, nursing, and business. If you're working in these fields, you'll be using the author-date format, within parentheses right in the text itself, something like Smith, 2023. Then, at the end of the document, your reference list uses a specific 1.25 centimeter hanging indent and must be arranged alphabetically by the author's last name. Next up is IEEE style, which absolutely dominates engineering, computer science, IT, and telecom. If you're in STEM, you live by the numeric bracket. Instead of names and dates disrupting the flow of the text, you just use a simple number in brackets, assigned in the exact order the source appears. Consequently, your reference list at the end is forced into a strict chronological numerical order that matches that first appearance. It's aligned left in square brackets rather than being organized alphabetically. Now, shifting gears to MLA style, specifically its 9th edition. The primary domain here is the humanities. That's literature, languages, and cultural studies. The in-text format uses an author page format, and notably, it's done without commas, so it looks like Garcia 112. The reference list is titled Works Cited. It's arranged alphabetically with a hanging indent. But the real focus for the humanities here is the heavy emphasis on structural containers. It's all about showing how a smaller source, like an article, lives inside a larger container, like a journal. This is crucial because tracing the exact physical or digital lineage of a text is absolutely vital for deep literary analysis. Finally, we look at Chicago style, currently on the 17th edition, which really rules history, fine arts, and high-level social sciences. What's genuinely fascinating about Chicago is how adaptable it is, because it offers two totally distinct subsystems. Subsystem 1 uses superscript numbers with footnotes and a bibliography, and that is a method heavily preferred by historians. Meanwhile, Subsystem 2 is an author-date format that's actually very similar to APA, just with slightly different punctuation, and it ends with a standard reference list.
And finally, Section 5, Summary Comparison. Let's pull this all together.
When we view all of these side by side, the little nuances really stand out. Just look at the endless titles. APA and IEEE call it references, MLA says works cited, and Chicago demands bibliography. Notice the list ordering, too. They all demand alphabetical ordering except IEEE, which relies strictly on appearance order. Even something as incredibly small as capitalization in article titles shifts from sentence case in APA to title case in quotes for all the others. Truly, memorizing the matrix of these rules guarantees you're speaking the exact visual language of your specific peer reviewers. And that brings us to the end of today's explainer. Look, you've put in the exhausting hours writing a thesis. You've already proven your mastery to your committee. But as you look to publish, I want to leave you with this single provocative thought. Right now, what is your single most impactful finding? Strip away all the excess. Choose the exact right citation tools for your discipline, and confidently communicate that one incredible outcome to the world. Thank you so much for joining me, and happy writing.